This is Ken Jobst, and you're with Taste and See. We're examining the intersection between faith and food. And today we come to an obscure little verse that can be found in the book of Leviticus. In Leviticus chapter 23, verse 40, we're going to find reference to a particular fruit that may be new to some people. Let's take a look. From Leviticus 23, verse 40. And you shall take for yourselves on the first day the fruit of beautiful trees, branches of palm trees, the boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God for 7 days. Now, this is a passage in the book of Leviticus that is centered around the celebration that accompanies the Feast of Tabernacles. The Feast of Tabernacles was one of the 3 feasts that were required attendance for all Israelite men and their families in Jerusalem. So if you lived anywhere in Israel, you were to travel to Jerusalem for the Feast of Tabernacles. And as you came along to the feast, you were to bring some specific items to help in the celebration. You were to bring the boughs of leafy trees, bring the branches of palm trees. Ooh, now wait a minute. Where did we ever see in the New Testament the waving of palm branches? Well, that goes along with the Feast of Tabernacles. Willows from the brook, and here's where our focus is today: the fruit of beautiful trees. Now, as it turns out, I'm reading from the New King James Version, which translates this somewhat obscure Hebrew phrase as the fruit of beautiful trees. Historically, that fruit has been thought to be what's called the etrog. What's an etrog? Have you ever had an etrog? Well, the etrog is something like a citron or something like a lemon. It's part of the celebration and rejoicing that was to be a part of the Feast of Tabernacles, celebrating Israel's relationship to God. Let me ask you a question. In his earthly life and ministry, did Jesus ever get the opportunity to eat an orange? Did Jesus ever eat an orange in his 33 years walking the earth? Or did Jesus ever have a grapefruit? Well, interestingly enough, the answer there is that Jesus certainly never had a grapefruit. And Jesus very, very, very likely never tasted a sweet orange during his life and ministry on earth. How do we say that? Well, by and large, contemporary citrus fruits that we buy at the store today, are not as ancient as you might think. As a matter of fact, many of the varieties of citrus fruits that are available to us today are actually developed by hybridization. They've been hybridized and rehybridized and reverse hybridized. It's a wonderful example of going forth and having dominion over the earth, right? Now, watch. Virtually, well, let me say, all of the citrus fruits that we have today are derived from only 4 different plants. So every citrus fruit, and if you look on Wikipedia, right, which is the source of all information, if you look on Wikipedia, you'll find no fewer than 45 different varieties of citrus. So you've got navel oranges, Florida juice oranges, tangerines, mandarins, grapefruit, ugly fruit, Cara oranges, blood oranges, which, by the way, I just need to have a word with the marketing director for whoever came up with the idea of calling them blood oranges. No, you don't open that orange and get blood, right? So that's why in some supermarkets they're marketed as raspberry oranges. Sounds much better. Other varieties of citrus include kumquats. When was the last time you had kumquats? Lemons, limes, clementines. So as I said, over 45 different varieties of citrus, but they all come from 4 different plants. They can all be traced genetically to a mere 4 plants. Those plants are the pomelo, which we have an example of right here. Isn't that beautiful? That is a pomelo. More about him in just a minute. All citrus comes from the pomelo, the mandarin, the citron, which is something like a lemon, and a plant called the pipetta. The pipetta is basically unpalatable. It's not something that you would ever want to eat. But it's one of the plants that's connected to the genealogy of all this modern citrus fruits. And why am I talking about citrus fruits? Well, it turns out that right about now is the peak season for Florida produce and California oranges. More about that in just a moment. But the likelihood is that Jesus never tasted an orange. He may have had a pomelo. He may have had a lemon. As a matter of fact, the earliest representation of a lemon comes from a mosaic floor near Pompeii, south of Rome, that's dated to around 300 AD. So this is, 200 years after the eruption of Vesuvius. But that's the earliest representation we have of a lemon in any kind of artwork or any kind of representation. Doesn't that strike you as strange? That even the ancients didn't have something that we take for granted, like a lemon. So they wouldn't have had lemonade. So they wouldn't have a nice little wedge of lemon with their sweet tea. Or a little lemon to season the fish with, right? No, all of these are modern. Now, citrus fruits then are never mentioned in the Bible. Just in this one occasion in Leviticus, it appears as though a citrus fruit is being referred to. You know what? It's very interesting. Citrus fruits, like the pomelo, the oranges, and these are navel oranges we have here, citrus fruits like lemon, provide us with a necessary nutrient that's called ascorbic acid. You may know it as vitamin C. And here's something else that boggles my imagination. Human beings are one of the few animals that don't synthesize their own ascorbic acid. Your cat doesn't need oranges and lemons. Your cat makes his own ascorbic acid. Dogs, they don't need this. They make their own. We have to go out and find sources of vitamin C, and one of the best sources of vitamin C, especially in the wintertime, especially when there's lots of cold and flu going around, it's good to have your immune system stoked up with the vitamin C. Now, back in the day, citrus fruits would have been a luxury item. They would have had to have been imported. Many of them would have come in from India. And in order to import these citrus fruits, the rich folk would have spent quite a bit of money. And since they were basically looking for a status symbol more than a dietary supplement, they would get that lemon and they'd keep that lemon for a good long time. They'd let everybody see the lemon. They'd have the kids call the neighbors over to look at the lemon. But would they eat it? Not so often would they eat it, because then they'd be destroying their testimony of their affluence. And watch this. Back in 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, there was a great widespread suspicion of raw fruits. If you couldn't cook it, the reasoning was you probably shouldn't eat it. So, not having any recipes for citrus, which, maintains its nutritive value best when it's fresh and uncooked, citrus went largely unused. Now, you know that if you don't get enough vitamin C, you're going to end up with all kinds of different nutritive diseases, right? Rickets, beriberi, scurvy, whatever it may be. And it was very, very slow in adopting citrus fruits, which is to say, the bitterness, the sourness set some people off. But over time, it took a long time for citrus fruits to be accepted and to be generally available. Today, you can get them just about anywhere. And I was so excited when I went to the store and found pomelos in season. If you get a chance to get a pomelo, looks like a grapefruit, right? As it turns out, grapefruit did not exist until the late 1800s. The first grapefruit tree that ever bore grapefruits was a mutation from a pomelo tree. And rather than bearing pomelos, it bore grapefruit, which, according to the name, they grew together like a clump of grapes or like a cluster of grapes. And so nobody knew what they were and they left them alone. And actually, it was years and years and years before somebody got up the courage to eat the first grapefruit. They tried it. They said, hey, that's not so bad. And so, as they say, the rest is history. But did you know the very first tree to bear a grapefruit is still alive in the state of Florida, the very first grapefruit tree? But the grapefruit is a mutation from the pomelo. The pomelo has an exceptionally thick skin. They're very, very thick skinned, but they have a much milder flavor than a grapefruit would have. A grapefruit's going to have a stronger flavor. By the way, so the late 1800s, we get the first grapefruit. It was in the 1400s that the first sweet orange came around. And it was in the 1600s, right? The 1600s, before limes came around. Remember limes? I used to think a lime was an unripe lemon instead of being its own thing. But all those citrus fruits are derived from only 4 fruits. Now, very quickly, I want to give you just an idea about some things that you can do with citrus. Give this a try. I think you'll be delighted and tickled. First of all, a little terminology. What's the difference between lemon zest and lemon rind? Lemon zest, lemon rind. What's the difference? Well, watch. The zest is basically the color. So it's a very, very thin layer. It's the color and it's the oils in the skin of the lemon. That's the zest. It is only the very, very thin outer color and oil. And by the way, every citrus oil is flammable. One time I peeled an orange too close to a birthday candle and it went boom. So, kids, don't try this at home, right? But be aware that citrus oils are flammable. So the zest is just the yellow part. The rind is the yellow part plus a little bit of the albedo, which is the white coating that's on the inside of the lemon. The peel is the whole jacket. Everything outside the meat of the fruit is the peel. Now watch, just for fun. You can peel an orange, peel a lemon. I've never tried it with a pomelo, but if you would like to make a candied citrus peel, here's all you do. Very easy. Take equal measures of water and granulated sugar, right? 1 cup of water, 1 cup of sugar. Slice the rind from whatever citrus that you're going to use and make little julienne strips, which are thin strips, a little bigger than a toothpick. Then boil those in the water and sugar mixture, which by the way is called simple syrup. So boil the rind in the simple syrup for about 15 minutes. Longer if you're worried about it being too strong a flavor. Then take them out, put them on a rack to let them dry, and sprinkle them with granulated sugar. After about 8 hours, they'll set up and they're just a delightful candied treat to share with friends and neighbors. Well, that's a quick overview of citrus fruit. A little vitamin C for these long winter months when it's gray and cold outside. A little insight as to how it is that we can bear the fruit of the Spirit, as it were, and to be able to multiply that fruit. Remember, all the way back in Leviticus, they brought fruit to demonstrate their love of God. How are you going to demonstrate your love of God this week? Many different ways to do it. But be thinking about citrus fruits, praising God, and all the other delightful things God gives us in creation. With Taste and See, this is Ken Jobst from St. Stephen Church in Louisville, Kentucky. Until next time, God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.